Hello and welcome. Thank you all for being here with us today. I'm Nick Kanoki, Director of Technology for the Asset Leadership Network, and I'm excited for a conversation today with Marty Rowland. We're hoping he should show up any minute, and if not, Jim Dieter, Jim Dieter regardless, and hopefully Marty Rowland as well. Jim is going to be talking to us about the social impact of asset management seminar that is coming up soon, May 10th. And we'll let Jim say more about that in just a moment. Before we get underway, though, we want to thank our ALN Platinum organizational member, Onuma System. They have an upcoming event, AIA with the American Institute of Architects, and we can talk a little more about that as well later. Thank you also to our patron members, especially Jacobs, and all our organizational members for making programming like this possible. If you're interested in working with the ALN, please reach out and we would love to figure out how we can collaborate and make the world a better place. And with that, another upcoming event, May 23rd. It's maybe we'll have to bring in Mike to talk a little about this one. It's a continuation of a recent event, right, Mike?
Yes, the Cities and Places Asset Leadership Board. This will be the first official web program, and it'll include the co-chairs, Claude Tankersley from St. Petersburg and Jennifer Mims from Jacobs and Jim Dieter from Jacobs and the ALN. And these gentlemen, and we might have some other people, but we're going to be talking about best practice sharing, how to accelerate best practices among cities, local governments, places. And then thank you, Nick, for also mentioning the Onuma Inc. presentation to the AIA Japan, which is a continuation of the ALN BIM storm that we did, and how Kimon focused it on artificial intelligence and what he has done in the few weeks since our program ended. And he very graciously is involving the ALN in this AIA Japan presentation. It's just mind-blowing. And it's actually leading to the ALN working with Onuma Inc. to offer training on how to incorporate artificial intelligence in your asset management planning. It's going so fast, it's incredible. And I think people will be very interested in an affordable way to learn about how to use this powerful tool in a positive manner. So, how is the weather in Lander?
Oh, it's great. Been beautiful here, and that really does wonders for the mind, body, and spirit.
And yeah, beautiful day in Chicago. And we've got Jim Dieter in Virginia. And we were going to have Marty Rowland, and he might join us at any time. Marty is on the board of directors for the Henry George School of Social Sciences. And that allowed him to be invited to be the guest editor for a year of publications of the American Journal for Economics and Sociology. Nick, if you want to put that up. And that's 4 quarterly publications. And one of the quarterly publications that he edits is going to focus on asset management. And he is going to allow ALN senior fellows and ALN organizational members to submit articles for peer review. And one of the things that he's interested in is trees as an asset. Marty works with the New York Park system, so he's very aware of trees. And we'll have to wait to get into that. If Marty is able to join us, perhaps some work then came up. But because Jim Dieter is facilitating the TC 251 conference next week in Philadelphia and has an afternoon seminar scheduled for Wednesday called The Social Impact of Asset Management, we have Jim Dieter here to talk with us about social impacts and hopefully Marty will be able to join and we'll have a discussion among these two distinguished people, but we can have a very good conversation with Jim and Nick. Please stick around and join this conversation.
Sure.
How you doing, Jim?
I am great. I am great.
What got you to this point in your asset management journey?
Unfailing optimism.
Which leads us to social impacts. Why did you name the conference or the seminar that's in the middle of this conference, Social Impact of Asset Management?
Well, if I can back up and just, so people are aware, if they aren't, that the ISO TC 251 has developed ISO 55000, had semi-annual in-person meetings in interesting places around the world from 2010 forward. And I got to go to many of those in cool places like South Africa and Prague and Yokohama, Japan. And we've hosted them twice here in the United States. And it's about 60 to 70 people from around the world getting together. It's leading thinkers in asset management. Of course, there's a lot more leading thinkers now than there were when we started. So quite exciting. So we're meeting in Philadelphia next week, and we'll be moving towards final steps on the 55,000 and 55,001 document. And it'll be our first in-person meeting since before COVID, before times. So it's been 3 years. And it has been quite challenging. We thought we were going to have 40 people there, and now we're going to have 70 or more people there. So it's quite exciting.
I was talking with Mark Knight today,
Yeah.
and he was very happy to be meeting you in person next week, is one of the things he said.
Yeah, there's lots of people that I've just not met. It's also, there's a lot of people that we've been working together but haven't met. But there's also like 8 or 10 new people joining the TC, the US tag part of it, that'll be attending that hadn't been involved in before, including people from Michigan and the Michigan Infrastructure Council, and people from the reliability world are going to be there, and just an array of people. Quite interesting.
Excellent.
Can I answer your question now?
Sure, Jim. Why did you name your seminar the Social Impact of Asset Management?
Yeah, well, I had something to do with it, but we had the overall US tag is responsible for the week and the events. For the TC runs the technical part of the meetings, but the host country, does all the breaks and the snacks and related activities. And we decided to have a conference, and we hit upon the idea of a conference that would really try to bring attention and focus of the potential contribution of asset management to some of the biggest issues in the world. And many of us that are heavily involved in asset management, especially in the ALN, understand that there's just enormous amount of assets, and the value is beyond calculation almost of the assets and how they're managed, and not just from a value preservation standpoint, but from a value creation standpoint, can have a huge impact, just a huge impact. Reading an article this morning in the Washington Post about trying to put more wind turbines on out in the Midwest, near you somewhere, I think, Nick, somewhere. I can't remember what state it was, but they wanted to put them on the site where there was one of their gettable Japanese internment camps from World War II. So there's a discussion about the value of produced by the wind turbines and the value of maintaining the dignity of the historic site nearby. So asset management's everywhere.
I've got a win-win attitude, and I could and that's not wind, it's a win-win. And I could see how the wind turbines would draw attention to the importance of those internment camps, and that they are not mutually exclusive. They could actually benefit each other. But
Are you suggesting middle ground, Mike?
yes, and
Is there such a-
I want to get back to the title, and then we've asked Nick to get the agenda ready. So we've been talking about the benefits to organizations of asset management, and that has been the very focused agenda for the ALN. And talking with you, I know that, you know, both of us and many of us have these bigger picture ideas, but this title starts bringing it away from just being about your organization to the fact that your organization exists in a greater context. And you've always mentioned that a trucking company has the trucks and the facilities where the trucks are, but they need the assets of the roads and bridges for them to be in business. And was your idea for the title of this to help people expand their idea of asset management, or what were you thinking?
Well, just trying to expand everybody's perception of what's possible and what asset management can do. And that's, you know, been my experience, especially since getting involved in the ISO effort, 10, 14 years ago now. But I always go, but I thought I knew everything, but no, there was more. I thought I knew everything, but no, there's more. And I think this is another one of those opportunities. I mean, we've talked about this a good bit before. People like Doug Detter, who's been one of our keynote speakers, and talking about the public wealth of nations, and how they should work, for nations and beyond that for mankind, is all possible. I think our biggest challenge, of course, is what is a story I read. Humans tend to make about 40% of their decisions on a rational basis. So the people making irrational decisions is not necessarily a shocking thing. There's Mr. Marty.
And we do have Marty. Marty, before we go to you, can we just wrap up really quickly with Jim by showing the agenda of the seminar?
Sure.
The social impact of asset management.
Yes.
Did we mention that this is available virtually to everyone? And that
And if you're in the Philadelphia area. So very quickly, you can go in person and you can register, as Nick showed, to attend online. And public service announcement, stroke prevention, very interesting topic. How's that fit in, Jim?
my neighbor, Alan Stillman, is, and there's a long story to it, the short version, he is a leader in the country on getting people to recognize the symptoms of strokes. A very fine asset manager that I knew about 10 years ago was at an asset management event, and he fell down. And he was like, well, what happened? He just collapsed. And if I had been able, and anyone there had been able to recognize the signs of a stroke, we could have told him to immediately go to the hospital. Instead, 2 weeks later, he was dead.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, Jim.
So, it's an awful story, but that's how important it is. And it's a huge factor in the United States. And there's simple things you can do, you can note to help people with this. Our own Bob Kaler was lucky. His wife recognized symptoms when he had a mild stroke a few years ago and rushed him to a hospital. And he is therefore still with us.
That's good.
Yeah, so this is a huge intangible asset management property issue, the intangible asset of knowledge and education of what to do. my mother was out to dinner. We were celebrating my father's birthday and she almost choked to death on a piece of chicken. But a podiatrist was there and knew how to do a Heimlich to someone in a wheelchair, saved her life. So very important. Then I see you've got Jack Dempsey talking about the strategies paper or report out of the National Academy of Sciences. That is definitely, please, that's going to be spectacular. I know that. I'm looking forward to that. And then we've got the panel that Jim is on. We got Mary Adams and ESG. Mary Adams represents ESG. And what's that panel going to be addressing, Jim?
Well, this really develops themes that we've been working on within the ALN over the last several months, and just in the direction we're talking about. But the idea is to get these people together and to see how it all fits. The ESG angle, really interesting. The Pater Duffy angle is very interesting as well. Unfortunately, Pater is not going to be able to join us, and we hope to have either a replacement or I will cover some of Pater's material. But how asset management impacts organizations and organizational success viewed through an ESG and risk management framework.
Excellent. And Michigan Infrastructure Council, every state should have an infrastructure council like this. So I'm really glad to see them speaking. We've talked with them last year at the Government Finance Officers Association. I'm looking forward to that. And then what is Bedouin going to be addressed?
Bodwin Nigels.
Bodwin.
Pronounceable and not spellable. I wonder how many times he spelled his name. Bodwin is awesome. And he's heavily involved in IAM Canada. And he has a lot to offer here about decision making as it relates to social factors. We can't say these words without saying involving all relevant stakeholders. So this is, kind of makes that a two-way street. So that's going to be good. Short presentation.
And then Chris Roberts gave an excellent presentation at the ALN event last year at the National Academies. So I'm sure he'll be expanding on that.
He's the president of the IAM Global. That's great.
So everyone can go to the link. Nick, if you could post that again and sign up. And then Marty, we'd like to focus on you, but if there's time, a little interaction between you and Jim would be great. So I gave an overview that you're on the board for the Henry George School of Social Science, and that you're the guest editor for a year of publications for the American Journal of Economics and Sociology. It's a quarterly publication that's been around for 82 years. What do you want to do with that guest editorship?
Yeah, well, you pointed out the time frame. It's really a matter of me proving myself. So if everything goes well, I'll be the, I guess they call me the special editions editor. So I've got one issue coming out this November, and I've got two planned, and I think the number 3 is the one that I think we talked about a little bit. So yeah, appreciate the intro and picking up on this social aspects. I've got a few ideas about the conference coming up, but so the journal, economics and sociology, and I was thinking what should be issue number 3 after I identified number 2, which is the 3 visions of climate change, which I guess I'll get to after what number 3 is about. So I kind of conceived of the issue called The Social Aspects of Asset Management, which is kind of interesting because it's the same title as the conference coming up. But I thought of that after listening to Malik Barami from Fairfax County. He went into an extensive description of what his vision was for the county and asset management. And I was just sitting there in my car with my jaw down to my the seat of the floor of my car, because he had such detail and so integrated with the overall approach to asset management. And so the idea behind that, I think we're getting beyond what the previous issues of that journal have been on, and getting it into a more practical idea behind it. So it's you just mentioned a few things that are very important about people's health. A lot of people would say, well, that's separate from asset management, but like you say, what's more important than people's lives when we're talking about assets and all the knowledge that goes back and integrates things. But the idea behind the issue number 3, and we talked about it, was looking at trees, for example, how important trees are.
Well, before we go into that, let's not make it seem like it's a issue about trees.
Oh, well, so that's going to be one paper of many, but yeah, so asset management, social aspects. So I'm looking for people to write papers. I'm looking for authors that will look at the integration of their asset management plan. What did it take? I think I've heard stories about people having to make the business case for asset management, and it was kind of funny is that if you can avoid a disaster, there's a big cost savings by avoiding disasters. So that would be something good. And it's one of those things, like I think it was about a year ago, January, where that bridge in Pittsburgh collapsed, and now everybody's forgotten about it. Everybody, I think, sensed that that's the way it was going to go, that luckily nobody died. But it's one of those things where it takes some money and some investment and planning to address these critical issues. And so that's
I really like that idea of providing solid foundation for people to begin to justify their asset management journey, or the extension of their asset management journey. And I love that it's the American Journal of Economics and Sociology, because money does make the world go around. Let's not pretend otherwise, but we can focus the money, because money is being spent on infrastructure. We can focus the money in a more thoughtful way. And what we have currently are measurements that are financially based. And that's easy for people. It's been centuries that's been happening. But the triple bottom line, which started in the 90s and then evolved into ESG, and then there's multi-capitals, the tools that we have now allow us to measure different values as easily as we measure financial values.
Mhm.
So the combination, I think, will be very powerful in establishing what you said, some solid foundation for discussions on return on investment and moving forward.
Yeah, and I like the idea of the journey, because so often we look at well, there's money in the budget, we spend it, and okay, well, what do we do next? Well, there's a continuation, and I like the word journey, the way you used it.
No, thank you. So when Marty approached the ALN about asset management issue of American Journal of Economics and Sociology, Marty said, I'm really into trees and the value that they provide as assets these days. And I said, we will help you with that. So we're setting up a tree asset leadership board, and Nick is co-chair with Marty, and Kimono Numa has agreed to work with us to show the technological side of measuring tree canopies, CO2 levels, air levels, soil conditions, water, whatever it is that the people who are tree experts want to measure will be able to tie. And then we've got another colleague, Christine Coffey, who is a cryptocurrency savant, and she has agreed to show us how, if somebody wanted to create a tree token that rewards the people who agree to have their tree canopies measured, that their successful increase in their tree canopies can contribute to the success of the token. And then that way people in India can get value of more than just their trees. They can increase their currencies. So it's a theoretical exercise that we will do through Kimon's BIMstorm. And then if some billionaire sees it and likes it, then maybe it could actually happen.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Mike, if I might, Kimon mentioned, I forget the exact phrase, but it has to do with heat islands in the context of urban planning, and how a lack of canopy or shade of some kind can really impact people's ability to move about the city comfortably, impacts public health, and thus, the public's productivity. So it really seems like trees can tie in all these aspects from people's health, like we were discussing at the beginning, to economics, to sociology, all of it.
That's why we love you, Nick. You see these things and know how to take it to the next level. So thank you for that.
I got a great story.
Please.
Our neighbors in the neighborhood I'm living in now, there's some big houses in a neighborhood next to us, and it's been there about 15 years, and they had trees that were just growing big enough to show the shade so that you could go for a walk in the shade. And last year, one day I came home and they were busy cutting them all down. And it turned out they were cutting them down because the roots of this particular tree tore up the sidewalks near them.
Yeah. Seems like
would have been good to think of that before they planted them, huh, Jim? Little asset management application there.
And they did not consult all the relevant stakeholders before they started.
Yeah, an easy fix would be to have an alternative to the sidewalk, like gravel or something, but I guess that wasn't really considered.
Well, we don't have to solve the problems of the world. We just need to announce that we're going to try to solve the problems of the world.
That's a great idea.
Mike, it seems like, this is one simple example of how Kimon's, BIMstorm process of using visualizations and quick models to just show people, oh, we have this problem. There's obviously a few ways to solve it. Here are a few different options and the outcomes. Let's get some input from a variety of people who live on this side of the street, that side of the street, and, neighborhood developers, et cetera. And, get to a better solution that more people are happy with and feel like their voice was heard in the process. So really good.
Absolutely. And I'm very happy to announce that Kimon understands that the BIMstorm moniker will not be as successful as we go forward as something related to asset management. And he's willing to do his whole processes for us, but we get to come up with a different title than a BIMstorm, and it's not going to be Asset Storm. Anyway, we get to work on that, and it's a pleasure to be able to announce to everybody the involvement of our CEO and our senior fellow and our platinum member in something that's we think will have a huge social impact. And That's why we're proud of all of our supporters who allow us to be leaders, thought leaders in this space.
Well,
So Nick, if you can, bring us home, but I would like to continue the discussion and get Jim and Marty to talk with each other.
Sure, yeah. Definitely want to thank ALN Platinum organizational member Onuma System and Kimon Onuma for his participation in recent BIM storms and upcoming events, as well as all our ALN patron members.
CGI, shout out to our CGI folks.
Yep, and of course Jacobs, and all our organizational members really make this possible. The Andrew James Advisory Group's running more A55K courses coming up, so you can find information about that training on our website. And if you're thinking your organization may be able to benefit from something that the ALN's working on or something we haven't even started working on yet, we would love to hear and talk about how we can collaborate. And then we have lots of upcoming events. We've talked about the social impacts of asset management next week already. And then this upcoming event with the ALN Cities and Places Asset Leadership Board, as you can see, May 23rd. So stay tuned.
well, it's good.
So Jim, oh, go ahead, Marty.
No, I was just going to say that I have a very good a tree story that I could relate to. I guess we're done recording the official ALN at 3.
Yes.
Okay.
This is where we get to the good stuff, though.
Okay. Well, it's related to that story I found in the New York Times, and it has to do with an Indian tribe in northern Wisconsin. And the story is that they've been, well, they negotiated with the US government to retain a portion of their forest in northern Wisconsin, even though the US government wanted them to move to Minnesota. So they got that. So they've been managing the same stretch of acreage with trees on it since 1850, I think. So they've been working on this, and I think they said a total replacement of trees 3 times now because of the length of time. But anyway, so now the younger generation of the indigenous people are not warm to continue to do the silviculture. So they're not generating as much money as they would have. So here's a situation where I think the crypto person might look at, well, what can we do to incentivize somebody to do what's right? I mean, this is a lot more valuable in terms of, say, a carbon credit than some promise somewhere, where it's actually they've got a system down, and they've got trees being harvested sustainably, and they just need to have the extra help.
So you've identified one definite set of stakeholders or constituents. We don't want to use stakeholders for this, because the harvesting of trees is important. And the people who harvest trees on a regular basis are probably the ones who will want to benefit the most from the cryptocurrency, because if they are doing their practices properly and they are contributing to measurements that are agreed upon, are valuable, that's their job. And why wouldn't they be interested in increasing the value of the cryptocurrency that's created around tree canopy?
Yeah, I'd be interested to see how that might work. But one of the things that was identified in that article is that the density of trees is actually greater when you properly and sustainably manage forests by taking out dead wood and wood that gets damaged with lightning, I suppose, or insects. And so once you get away from that system, then you kind of revert to something that's less efficient, and I guess in the sense of carbon capture, less less good, let's say, because what's ideal is the increased amount of sequestration of carbon, and if you have a more dense forest, you have that too. So yeah, that was very revealing, is that the amount of good things that are happening when you intervene sustainably.
Another good example as well of the value preservation and value creation. It's great to have the trees, it's great to keep planting the trees, but what's the value produced by the forest that the trees form?
Yeah.
Those are the questions, and I see us starting to get there, that we're starting to understand things in a more macro sense, and the individual assets contributing to it, rather than focusing on, is this rotating device still rotating?
Yeah. One of the things I think is that needs to be addressed a lot more is the idea of burning trees as a renewable resource. I think it's almost kind of like crazy, because trees have sequestered all this carbon, and then in one fell swoop, you put it back in the atmosphere. So there's so many other ways that you can heat your home. So here we are with trees doing this environmental function, essential, but trees are also this commodity that some people would like to leave it to the market to figure out. And I think in terms of sustainability, I'm not sure that the market by itself can direct us toward asset management.
Well, that's what I like about the ESG involvement in the social impacts of asset management, is they are starting to say we need to measure, the market needs to measure something other than just the financial bottom line. Jim, is that part of your interest in that panel?
Yeah, the whole measurement thing is an interesting question. People misquote if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. They leave the rest of the quote out, which is just about that there's lots of things of value that you can't quantify, yet we're driven to consider them. So how do we do that? And I think there's still a lot of discussion to be had in that area.
That's why I love the connection, Marty, to the American Journal of Economics and Sociology, because I think the answers that Jim is talking about, the intangible values to measure, are being measured in sociology. I think there are ways to measure that. Nick mentioned it earlier in terms of health benefits, tree canopies, shade, reduced temperatures in neighborhoods and stuff. So Nick has been doing a lot of research already, kind of all over the place. We need to outline where we want to go with this project, because what we're going to do is run a project. We're still calling it BIM storm because we haven't come up with tree storm or whatever it is that we're going to call it. Yeah, Nick, do you want to talk about any of the information that you have found in your initial research?
Yeah, I would say a lot of the research I've been doing is how to leverage new tools that are coming out, seems like daily, with artificial intelligence. And that I guess Kimon's BIM storms have often utilized GIS, geospatial, I forget what that phrase GIS stands for, but the picture of Google Earth and the idea that you can layer different data sets on top of it to see temperatures throughout a city or a country or the world, different amounts of tree canopy, and maybe see where some things overlap. I just think using the data that's already available and leveraging some of these now increasingly strong softwares, and mostly freely available ones, to just get real-time information about how your city or your locality could benefit from different practices, and then to make that argument in a way that lands with those different stakeholders in a way that's visual so that they can understand and see the potential effects and potential value. That's mostly where my head has been recently.
Yeah.
But I suspect
What is the
Marty has a lot more.
Yeah, I had a few ideas. In fact, I think instead of BIM storm should be EJ storm, which stands for environmental justice. So I'm throwing that out as an idea.
Okay.
The thing that I think is important, and the issue number 2, which is going to be the 3 visions of climate change, I'm going to actually publish the full 27-page article that I wrote for the Henry George School of Social Science, and in that I took the information that's available on the internet, which allows you to calculate the amount of carbon sequestration capacity based on the number of trees that somebody estimated and the average amount of CO2 that's captured. So I did all the math in that article, and it shows that based on what we understand is that there's plenty of tree capacity for capturing carbon, but it's apparent that the trees aren't where the emissions are. But I don't really know what, I don't think anybody's really looked at that issue. But what's important is that, not only are the trees, but it's apparent that oceans play a pretty good role on capturing carbon dioxide as well. So, and as the temperatures go up, apparently it captures more, but that's kind of like a feedback system. But I guess the reason I'm bringing it up is that I'm kind of like flabbergasted that nations of the world, they come together every year and they complain about but the carbon emissions, but we're kind of like it's like the grandmother in the attic kind of problem where the trees are what's moderating these emissions. So if these nations come together, talk about emissions, I think at the same time they need to talk about what's going on with trees. And I'm thinking that might be what comes out of our efforts, is to elevate the importance of trees and what we estimate what they could be, because it's a big deal if like what Jim says, somebody just chopped down trees because of a sidewalk. I mean, I think Greta Thunberg should be out there protesting.
That's why I like the economic connection to it, because if that community was getting a return on its crypto value because of those, and their tree canopy goes away, then perhaps the way we set it up, then their part of the crypto goes away.
Yeah.
So that's why I like the economics part of it. And that's what made me think of connecting to my colleague who is in the crypto world.
Yeah, no, I think it's great.
I note that we haven't identified, or at least you haven't mentioned, a connection to professionals or experts in the world of trees.
So I was going to say, my research has led me to see that there is already a wealth of information in this regard. There is actually already a forest coin, but you only get a value for planting a tree, which is wonderful. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think the true measurement of the asset should have multiple ways to measure the value. And we're going to have a lot of hard work trying to connect to everybody who is already doing a lot of very important work in this regard. But by having it published in a journal and having it be an asset management issue, I think will increase the intensity of the spotlight on this area.
That's good. That's good thinking, Mike.
Thank you.
And, I think this is our opportunity to kind of elbow our way to prominence, where somebody might be doing something, but it's not the answer. And if we do our job, we're getting closer to what the answer should be. So it's within our right to start elbow our way to the front.
Well, that's why I applaud you, Marty, for making one of the issues focused on asset management, because we want to encourage our senior fellows and our member organizations to see this as a wonderful opportunity to address infrastructure, to address whatever their focus is in asset management. And I've already reached out to our colleagues at the UN, and they're doing things on a national level throughout the world. So I'm hoping that they'll want to submit an article, and I'm hoping other senior fellows and other members see this as an opportunity to have the topic that they love highlighted in a well-respected journal.
Yeah, that's great.
So Jim, let's let you have a final plug for the conference next week. Think in terms of highlights for social media.
Absolutely. It's really an opportunity to get leading thinkers from around the world, both within the asset management world and from adjacent areas like ESG and risk management, to sit down and think about some of these big level issues that have societal impact. Assets, anywhere you go and think about the problems of the world, assets are there and are a big part of the problem, and they're a big part of the solution. And the real aim of this, as we're doing today, is to spur more conversation. This should be a topic of conversation, and it should increase. And we have seen from the ALN that often these events have much larger impact than we can imagine. The word does get out to the people that matter. That's important. So I hope you'll all be able to participate in that Wednesday afternoon conference next week.
Yeah.
And there'll be an opportunity to ask questions, to get involved. So chance to learn and to share. Thanks.
And Marty, are you going to actually go down to Philadelphia, or are you going to take part in the web presentation?
I'll probably on the web presentation. Maybe I can check my schedule because Amtrak goes down there, and maybe I can get in and out. So it's a one-day conference.
It's a 3-hour afternoon conference from 3:30 to 6:30.
Yeah, sounds like a leave early New York and come back late. From
Well, that's why the web program is there. You can participate that way. I'm not making you travel, but thank you for joining us, and thank you for allowing ALN senior fellows and member organizations participate in the asset management issue of American Journal for Economics and Sociology.
That's
Nick,
good.
thank you for accepting the co-chair position for the Trees Asset Leadership Board, and
Pleasure.
we look forward to seeing people next Wednesday and again next Thursday.
Again,
Thank
thanks a lot.
you.
Bye for now.